how do we determine our needs from our wants? At times they can be easy to distinguish one from the other. For instance, I need to breathe. But while driving, I don't need to speed. I want to. But sometimes this can be a lot harder to determine as well. When I'm angry and I'm fighting with my brother, and I think of the perfect verbal jab that will win the fight and get right underneath his skin, I feel like I need to say it, but I want to. In today's gospel, the story of the prodigal son, it's one that we know all too well. But it's a perfect example for us to see our wants from our needs, because we can confuse them. But it's ultimately that what we need is the love and the grace of God. But we see this confusion with both of the sons in the parable today. In the younger son, it's easier to see where he goes astray. He demands his half of the inheritance from his father, pretty much telling him, "Father, I wish you were dead, and give me what you owe me." And so his father lovingly gives it to him, and then his son leaves, spends everything and squanders it all. But then he realizes, as he's desiring the scraps that the pigs would have, so not even the food that the humans were eating, that his fellow people were eating, the scraps of the pigs. So when he hits rock bottom, that's when he realizes what he actually needs. Because all the material things that he had, all his wealth, well, he lost it all. It all faded away from right before his eyes. But what he needed was to love and to be loved. So he goes back to his father, one of the people who would have loved him first and loves him unconditionally. So he humbles himself and receives what he needed. But the older son also confuses his needs and his wants as well. Because while his younger brother was blinded by his greed for the material things of the world, he himself was blinded by his anger. And instead of receiving his brother with joy, he's upset. He feels like his needs have gone unmet. Because he wanted to throw a party with his friends, but he wasn't allowed to. And so he tells his father this. He refuses to celebrate the joy in his brother coming back. And so his father says to him, "Everything I have is yours," which is true. His brother had squandered his half of everything. He had nothing. Everything that the father had was to be the older brother's. So he was going to get what he was owed, but in due time. But what the older brother needed to learn was humility. He didn't need to earn his father's love. He always had it. The father said to him, "You are here with me always." So he didn't need to continue working out in the field to earn his love. He already had his father's love, unconditionally. And he didn't need a banquet to be thrown in his honor to acknowledge that. But he wanted it, though. And that's part of the point that the father makes to him. His brother's punishment was to come back, was to walk back, humiliated, broke, probably a little disgusting. He would have been with the pigs in the pen. In a sense, he was dead then. He had publicly cast off his father and wished him dead. So he in himself was dead to his family because he wished them dead. But he had to come back. You can imagine it was almost a slow walk for him. He was expecting to be punished for all that he had done. After all, that would have been just. But his father sees him while he's still a long way off and knows exactly what his son needs in that moment. And so he runs out and embraces him, a public sign of welcoming him back. So his punishment was already done. What he needed was the love of his father. and his father was all too willing to comply. Because I know for myself that if I go anywhere, I need to text my mother that I arrived safe and sound, no matter where it was. And usually I don't. I forget. But it's usually a couple hours later from when I was expected to arrive that I'll get a bunch of text messages, a couple calls, maybe a FaceTime. But she just wants to know. She's worried. So it's easy to see how the father might be worried about his son. How he must have waited for him. And yeah, he might have wanted to scold him, but he wanted him back home first. So the father loves both of his sons exactly where they are. But as a good father, he doesn't want them to stay where they are. His younger son needed to learn to appreciate the things that really matter, what he really needs. And he learned that lesson the hard way. And the older son needed to learn humility. That it wasn't all about him just because he was the one that had stayed faithful and with his father. So how do we determine our wants from our needs? In the fourth week of this message series, Your Grace is Enough, we've heard that we don't have to rely solely on ourselves, and that it's never too late for us to be renewed with the Lord, to start again. And both of these are lessons that we see in today's gospel with both of the sons. And this gospel then also shows us that what we need is the love and the grace of God at all times. Because no matter where we are in our lives, we are the sons in the parable, either younger or older. And God is always the loving Father, waiting for us to come back to him each and every day. So aware of this need, we should lovingly turn to him every day and ask for his help, to be grateful to him for all that he has given us. Because it doesn't matter what's going on in our lives. We don't need another self-help book or program. We don't need the things that will fade in time. What we truly need, who we truly need, is Jesus Christ. And we need the love and the grace of God. So much so that we should want it as well. Because God is the good Father who knows exactly what we need at all times. It is he who gives us everything and every grace we possibly need to become saints. But he also wants and desires it for us. And he wants us to want it. Because we can be distracted, become confused. But he's the loving Father who waits for us to recognize that in ourselves, so that he's not forcing anything. Because love is an act of our will. So we have to choose it every single day. So we need his love and his grace to help us to grow in virtue, to become the saints he so desires us to be. Because after all, his grace is enough.